We're going to switch over here. No Seawolves news, unfortunately, following the large schedule drop that we had, but Bell and I wanted to take a look at the Seadragons roster and get some players to watch after the draft had taken place. Obviously, a roster cutdown is going to take place for our Seadragons here as training camp takes place before we get to kickoff in February of 2023. But it's an interesting roster made up of a bunch of players that have played NFL, haven't played NFL, or coming straight out of college, or a few years off of college. So let's look into our offensive and defensive players to look at. Bell started off with former Cowboys quarterback Ben DiNucci, one of three quarterbacks on the Seadragons roster. He does have some NFL experience, being picked in the 7th round of the 2020 draft by Dallas. In his one start with the team, he finished with 219 passing yards, 53.5 completion percentage, and no interceptions, which is a good thing. You know, it's good to not throw any picks, but that quarterback battle between DiNucci and Steven Montez is going to be an interesting one. I know Montez has some experience with Washington, played in Colorado, so I know his name a little bit, having played in the Pac-12. It all starts with the quarterback. The last XFL team, just the Seattle Dragons, in the last iteration of the XFL, had a little bit of a quarterback controversy between Brandon Slivers and BJ Daniels, pardon me. So this is seems like Bell has her quarterback pick. I went with running back Brendan Knox. Knox is a 6-foot back out of Marshall. He had 2,852 rushing yards over 3 seasons. His breakout year was 2019 with 1,387 yards on the ground and 11 touchdowns to match, with the 2019 USA MVP adding to Knox's sort of trophy case there, so to say. I picked Knox because, you know, you look at Seattle as a football city, at least for me, having grown up, you know, going to a day, watching the University of Washington and being a Seahawks fan. Running the ball is a key aspect in the offense here. I know that June Jones is we got the tip, thankfully, that June Jones is one of the sort of the all-father of the run and shoot offense. That's why there's only one tight end on the roster. But Knox, just looking at sort of the player that he is a downhill physical back that fits the exact mold that Seattle normally sees in running backs. So it's exciting to think about that because I'm used to sort of bruisers. You look at Marshawn Lynch, obviously. One of my favorites at UW was Myles Gaskin. Not necessarily a bruiser, but you just look at some of the history of the running backs, and Brendan Knox kind of fits that Seattle style of running. And that's what I was excited to see in him. It'll be funny if he doesn't end up making the roster, but he's my sort of pick to watch, Brendan Knox, when it comes to the offensive side of the ball for the Seadragons. We switch over to defensive here. Bell went with cornerback Chris Jones. Now, Chris Jones is an interesting selection, not necessarily related to the defensive tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a 6-foot, 200-pound cornerback from Nebraska. As a junior with Nebraska, he had 3 picks, 10 pass breakups, and 37 tackles, was named All Big Ten honorable mention. He signed with the Lions back in 2018, but failed to make their 53-man roster. Then went to Arizona and spent 2 years with them, has had brief stints with the Lions, the Vikings, the Titans, and the Raiders. So he's kind of bounced around the NFL, hasn't found a home. In 29 NFL games, he's had 6 starts, 48 total tackles, 40 solo, 8 assisted, and 7 pass deflections. So easy to understand why Bell would go with Jones there, having the NFL experience. Is a guy that hopefully that's able to transition on the field to our Seadragons here. I went with defensive end / linebacker Curtis Weaver. Now, Weaver was in the NFL as recently as this season. He's a 6'3" pass rusher out of Boise State. He's the 2019 MWC Defensive Player of the Year. In his time with the Broncos, he tallied 47.5 tackles for loss, 34 sacks, 2 picks, 3 forced fumbles, and 1 fumble recovery over 3 years. He spent time in 2020 and 2022 with both Miami and Cleveland and did record a sack in the NFL this year. So just looking at the stats year in and year out for Weaver, a guy that consistently was flirting or at double-digit sacks for the Broncos, and having spent some time in the NFL recording an actual sack in the league this year, he seems like a guy that's going to be a terror off the edge for this Sea Dragons team, someone that's going to help rush the quarterback. And that's a big factor, obviously, in any team, is getting pass rushers, guys that are going to be able to help those defensive backs out, like a Chris Jones. So Curtis Weaver, Brendan Knox are my guys to watch. Ben DiNucci, Chris Jones, Bell's picks there for our Sea Dragons.